Hi, everyone. I am Rachel Howard, and I am here with Colin Hicks. And this is our Alley Cat of the Month interview. And I'm so excited to be back with Colin after this crazy year that we have all survived. And Colin, especially, has been working like a madman through it. I think he had a very high pressure, hardworking 2020. And we got to see him occasionally on Thursday nights when we would do our Alley Zooms, but haven't gotten to see him in person yet since the pandemic began. If you used to hang out at the Alley before the pandemic, you would see him at the far corner of the bar right next to the piano. And he wouldn't sing, even though we're still working on that. And he's still saying, no, he's not going to sing. But you'll still continue to be pressured when we get you back there. But he's very supportive to all the singers, and just person you always want to see when you walk into the Alley, and usually there with a really nice bottle of wine too. And he's been working really hard as a political organizer. Ever since he finished high school, I think, but especially this last year. So I'm going to ask him about that in a bit. I've just been actually going over your LinkedIn profile and seeing where you've been and where you are currently. You're now at the Center for Popular Democracy.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I've been there since 2018. Yeah, 2018 is when I started there.
Okay. And you did some, I think, consulting for Indivisible, and you really got started in all of this when you were an early organizer for Obama's first campaign, right? And then the second campaign, you were a regional field organizer for the Obama campaign. Yeah. Great. Well, how has this year been then? How are you feeling after all we've been through?
Last year was, like you said, was very tough and very draining for multiple reasons, right? We had pandemic and all that suffering and pain and change that happened around that, but also defeating Trump took an enormous amount of energy and time, and 2020 was very, very tiring. I feel like I just got out on the other end, maybe a month ago. I started feeling somewhat normalish. I'm feeling good now. Feeling actually really good, and tackling kind of the fights that are possible now because we don't have Trump in office. There's so much we can do now, now that he's not there. And there's a lot of fights, obviously, that's remaining. Trumpism is still a big part of the Republican Party, and causing all types of issues. But we're actually able to start thinking about solving problems now instead of just defeating him all the time.
That's something I want to ask you about at the end of the interview. What those of us who want to stay active and involved can do this coming year, even when the pressure is hopefully not so urgent for this coming year, but to still stay active. But I'll ask you about that later on. First, I'm curious, you were at the Alley, I think one of the last nights before it closed because of the pandemic. Is that right? I remember you being there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think it was like March. It was like that week of March 15th last year, 2020, and I had plans to fly out the following day. I think it was like that Saturday or something, or maybe it was a Sunday. I was flying to LA, to Long Beach, to visit my sister, and my mom and my grandmother was flying in from Chicago because that's where they were living at the time. And we were all just gonna spend, a few days together as a family. It was gonna be like a nice kind of get together. And then we know that weekend or that following Monday is when California began its lockdown. And so my mom couldn't go. My mom didn't need to go back to Chicago because she was a Chicago public librarian and they had shut down. So she stayed, and I decided to stay. And it was going to be temporary. We thought, maybe do this for the week and kind of touch and go and see how it goes. Weeks turned into months, and I ended up staying in Long Beach. And that's another story. But the kind of the night before I go, anytime I travel, typically I have a routine of restaurants I go to, friends I see. The alley is a huge piece of this. Obviously, I think I always end my nights at the alley. So yeah, I was going through my Oakland routine of going to my wine bar, going to my restaurant, seeing my friends, heading to the alley around 7, 8 o'clock to before the singers begin.
Wow. And then you took your trip to Long Beach, and then you were in Long Beach and you decided to stay there you ended up staying there pretty much the whole year, right?
I'm still here. Yeah, I mean, it was a hard decision, but it was more of a, let's make sure my family is all in one place and safe. So me moving here was a big kind of piece of that puzzle of making that happen. Like moving my mom and my grandmother from Chicago to Long Beach during a pandemic took a lot. But we got it done, and we're all here, we're all safe. And it was just a decision that had to happen.
So you're living all together now with your family in the same
All
home?
in Long Beach. We're separate places, but we're all here in Long Beach.
Yeah. Are we going to be able to get you back to Oakland?
Perhaps. I have not decided whether I'm moving back, but the big news here is that I will be back visiting for the first time the week of June 15th.
Oh, that is great news.
Yes, I'll be, because California opens up officially on the 15th. So I'll fly in on the 17th, which is a Thursday, obviously. And then I'll be at the alley Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Oh, fantastic. Okay,
Yeah.
I got to write that into my plans too.
I'll let everybody know, of course.
That's great.
Okay.
Well, tell me about how you discovered the alleys, because I know from talking with you at the bar that you grew up in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
In the 90s. I think you went off to Illinois State in 2000. So
yeah, I moved to Oakland in 90, I want to say the summer of 93. And I actually lived, the first place we moved to was 250 Grand Avenue, which, not too far away from the alley, right? I was obviously 12, so I had no understanding of what a piano bar was and how cool that this place was like 8 blocks down the street. But I always knew that neighborhood growing up. That was kind of like my stomping ground. The playground I lived right across the street from the park at Lake Merritt. So that's where had a lot of fun and friends would hang out. And so that area, the kind of the Adams Point, Lake Merritt area is kind of where I grew up, kind of during those junior high years.
Okay. What schools did you go to?
I went to Westlake, which was a junior high at the time. Now it's middle school, but at the time it was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And that's pretty much where I stayed. And then, and I moved around a bit after that, but I went to Westlake for those 3 years.
And then you went away to Illinois. You studied political science there. How did you end up going to Illinois from Oakland?
So when I was 17, my mom kind of just wanted the family to move back to Chicago. She was born and raised there, and she had moved. My grandmother and her had moved to California, when she was 16. So she just wanted the family to move back. I didn't have a whole lot of choice in the matter. I was a teenager, so but it ended up being a good, kind of a good decision. I ended up going to junior college first. Started when I was at that age, so I didn't have to wait to get into college, and did junior college in downtown Chicago. Then I transferred it to Illinois State my third year in college.
Okay. All right. And you knew, obviously, you wanted to work in politics. You studied political science, and then you went straight into political organizing and campaigns, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I definitely bounced around a bit. As far as my focus in political science, I originally wanted to focus in more international political realm, relations. But I couldn't nail down languages. I'm just not, my brain isn't suited for learning a lot of languages. So once I tried to learn 3 or 4 different languages while in college, so I could really do the international relations focus, I ended up transferring to more kind of domestic politics, and really getting excited about kind of the history of it and different types, getting into campaign politics. School really doesn't teach you about campaign politics. But I was lucky because I was in school in 2004 when Barack Obama was running for US Senate in the state of Illinois. So that was a big thing on campus, and I got involved in that.
I wanted to hear more about that. So yeah, you start hearing about Obama and you end up working for his campaign. Did you know right away, this is someone I want to work with? I see a lot of potential in this leader. How did that happen for you, that you got pulled into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people, especially people from Illinois, were super excited about Brock. Everybody in my family was. My family lived on the south side of Chicago, like in his state Senate district, right? So he was like our state senator. He was running to become U.S. senator, and so it was an exciting time when he decided to actually run for office. I mean, I don't know who's listening, but like that period between 2004 when he won, became U.S. senator, and like that period in between 2004 and 2007, before he like announced he was running, was like he was everywhere, right? Like he was speaking, he had a book tour. He was like, people just thought of him as like a really exciting person, and he was like a real new face in politics, right? So being from Illinois, I kind of had an inside track to be able to like know a bit more about him, and then also kind of know people who were already working for him on his like Senate staff side, so the hard side, and then also on when you decide to launch his presidential campaign. So I pretty early on just started like volunteering in Chicago. So I was there, is downtown headquarters. And then, at that point, there were all these primary campaigns happening. So there was Iowa, there was Nevada. He was setting up like stuff in, New Hampshire and South Carolina. And, so he was setting up all these like campaigns. And I had seen documentaries about like primary campaigns. There's a famous Clinton campaign documentary that I had watched a lot. And, I just wanted to like get involved. I wanted to see what it was like. So they weren't hiring. So I just decided to go to the Nevada, spent like the last 2 weeks of that campaign there. Was really excited about it. I mean, I was just doing, your typical volunteer activities at that point. I wasn't organizing really. I wasn't really managing anybody, but I was just there as like additional capacity to make phone calls and knock on doors. And then, once the Nevada caucus was over, he won. It was thrilling. But people just packed up and they go to the next state, right? So I was kind of just caught up in that and bounced around to Texas and North Carolina. North Carolina was the first place I actually got paid. Got a little, I think it was like $250 stipend check to do this. And then, after that, there was like about like a month kind of in between time between like before he won the actual primary, kind of like, went all the way, I think, into like May of 2008 or whatever, because him and Hillary were fighting it out. And then once the primary was done, general election was getting ramped up, I got tapped to go to the state of Pennsylvania to organize, to be actual field organizer in the kind of suburbs of Philadelphia, Berks County.
Yeah. And from then you were all in politics, right? Because then he won, you worked with other campaigns, you worked with other organizations.
that was foundational, and I caught the bug, and I really enjoyed organizing. I enjoyed the bouncing around to different cities and different towns and setting up shop and organizing with people in those communities, and like really like kind of giving them the tools and the training to do this type of work in their own communities. And like, that's still kind of like the big thing I get excited about. Like, there's like volunteers that I worked with in 2008 that are still like the leading organizers and activists in their communities today. And they were really activated during that campaign.
Wow. So how did you end up coming back to Oakland?
All right. So, I mean, I had worked and organized in probably about 12 states from like 2008 to 2014. I had bounced around pretty much nonstop, 12 states in those kind of that period of time, and a couple of countries even as well. And I had always wanted to come back to the Bay, but it was really difficult because like, especially, I would say even pre 2018, the way they did campaigns in California and in like the Bay Area was like different than what I was doing, right? Like kind of the grassroots political organizing. There's grassroots community organizing that always has happened in the Bay. Kind of people say it's like foundational in the Bay, but political organizing that way wasn't really done that way. It was much more of a paid media type of thing. If you were running for office, you ran money to like, you raised money to like run big media campaigns, not so much grassroots campaigns. You left that to like the community organizers. So it was hard to like get a gig to send me back, right? So I never did. Like I worked in a lot of like battleground states that we were like really like, engineering this new way of political organizing, tapping into what the community organizers have been doing for decades. So after the 2014 cycle, there was huge losses across the country. I was feeling pretty like I had lost, all my friends had lost their races. And I just wanted to have a timeout. I really hadn't stopped from 2018 to 2014. It was just like one campaign after the other, one city after the other. And I loved it, but I wouldn't say I was burnt out, but I was definitely tired of it a bit. And I wanted to like see if I could use the skills I had learned into, like other fields, right? And a lot of my friends were going to California and getting, who would work for Obama, were getting jobs in like the, the kind of tech sector, the startups, sectors that were happening in the Bay. So I was like, let me see what this is about. I had a couple of conversations. I got recruited to work for a startup company that was being, launching their Bay Area operation. It was all about like ending the kind of the multinational food distribution network, right? Like, like that was the bad guy, and we were going to like localize food economies. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. Let me check it out. And then they brought me out to build out their shop in the Bay Area. So that brought me back in 2014.
Wow. Okay. And so tell me how the alley ended up on your circuit of Oakland places, which like we're honored to be on your circuit. I'm curious where the other places are that are part of your routine, but how did you discover the alley?
So yeah, I mean, I think it just comes from a tradition of like, I moved around a lot. So every time I would move to a new city, one of the first things I would try to do is identify like, what's like the cool bar that I could go to like on a regular basis. That, and that's like, it's not an easy thing to find. A lot of places you don't want to necessarily spend a lot of time at, but I've always seen of like, having a local bar is like a big part of living in a place, like having a place to go to relax after work, especially in politics. It's super stressful. So like after, you're never done working necessarily, but like once you can leave the office or whatever, you're done with meetings, going to the bar to just relax and kind of just drum it out. And like having one that has live music is always like something you look for. You don't always get to find that. A place that's like not super expensive because you're going to be drinking a lot. You don't want to spend all your money and you don't get paid a whole lot of money as an organizer. So like, there's like these boxes that you want to check that the alley just like checks all the boxes, right? So it's just, it was easy. It was a great find, right? And it was in my neighborhood. I moved to Adams Point, and one of my coworkers, I was asking like, hey, I was just asking the question, what are some good local bars? Any place that plays like live music. I was like, this is my neighborhood. It'd be great if I could walk to the place. And he was just like, yeah, the alley's right there. I was like, what's the alley? And he was like, oh, it's the only piano bar left in Oakland. And he kind of gave me like a little bit of the, he knew a bit about it, and was like, he was like, before I had a wife and kids, like he was in a band, and his band would always go to the alley. And this was probably like in the late 90s or like the early 2000s. And so he was a regular when he was like a bachelor. And he was just like giving me like all this information. And I was just like, he's hyping up a lot. And he ended up telling me to go. He was telling me the dates to go. And he told me like to go like on a Wednesday or something. And so the first time I actually went was like an off day, really. And it was like, there was nobody was singing. There was no piano player. But I liked the vibe. And I actually sat like in the back that's like, one of those side tables by the kitchen, which I never sit at now, but like that was the first place I sat at. And I enjoyed the vibe immediately. You walk in through the swinging doors and you kind of just end up in a whole new place.
Yeah. Great. So you came back and there was some music going on. And what did you think of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I ended up, I felt like I Googled it or something, like when are the dates that because I could tell there was a piano there, and I know there's this piano bar. So I Googled, I found it was like Thursday, and Thursday through Saturday, the piano player, piano players are there, singers are there. So I don't know if it was like that week, but it was like that was like definitely the fall of 2014. I think I came back sometime like December 2014, like on one of the right days, and it was like juking, right? It was just like people and laughter and singing and piano music and Jim behind the bar like running back and forth, and it was great. And I got a good seat that time. I don't think it was at the bar though. It was like the table that's like, which I go to a lot, but like that table that's sticks out that's right across from the piano. And you just sit there and you have your drink and you're relaxing and you're just watching the atmosphere and all these characters and good music and good vibes, and it's very capturing.
And so when you started going, Rod was still playing, right? So not as much. He was starting to dial it back.
Right. He was definitely when I first started going, I think he was doing it twice a week still. And yeah, and then, over the next year or so, he dialed it back a bit from there too.
Yeah. So you were there for the transition to Brian, which for those of us who had been singing with Rod for a long time was like miraculous, because we were all so worried, what will happen in this place? Will the music still be here if Rod can't be coming in? And then there was Brian, and it was just like perfect fit for the community.
No, I definitely remember hearing
like that to you.
Hearing the angst. I definitely remember hearing the angst from the singers, and there was a high amount of angst about it. I mean, people knew who Brian was, but no one knew that he was gonna like be as stable and sturdy as he has become. He would come in, do a night when Rod wasn't in or whatever. He would always kind of like be that pitch hitter at the alley, and so people knew him. I mean, I knew who he was. I think all the singers knew. A lot of the singers knew who he was, but the fact that he was able to come in and like command it as much as he has is pretty great.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah. And you used to come in with this friend of yours that I liked a lot named Max. I was always wondering what's going on with him these days. Is he still working in politics? Do you know?
He's been out. I mean, so I had met Max, like he was an organizer. I worked with him in like 2011, 2012 in Wisconsin, and then again in 2013 in Virginia. And then, we stayed in touch as we kind of both like jumped around different states. And then when I got the job at Formigo, I got to hire a team of like basically organizers, but not political organizers. And I thought about like who I would hire, and he was like on the top of the list, because I just knew him as being like super high quality organizer. I understood people, had a world outside of politics too, which I think was important. And so I had called him up. He was working in Wisconsin at that point again, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, moving to California for sure." And he just like he just packed up his car and like drove out one day.
Well, we're seeing him there.
Yeah, and Wisconsin has a great bar culture as well. So in very similar ways, he enjoyed the alley in kind of the same way I did. He had that same kind of passion as far as like for live music and just kind of good hole in the wall bars.
Yeah. And you quickly became really good friends with Lori Robinson, among other people, but I think especially Lori, it seemed.
Yeah, Lori's an amazing person.
Yeah. Any other like favorite people, favorite memories now, especially since it's been a whole year since you've been able to be there?
I'm not going to name a list of folks because I love everybody and I don't want to leave anybody off. But, I will name like Paul Rose was huge. It's a huge like factor in like, just like life itself, but also like very, important for like me getting to know everybody at the alley. Like he was the first one. He was first regular to reach out to and just say like, "Hey, who are you? What do you like? What are you doing here? Why do you keep coming around?" And letting me know kind of who was who and what was what. And it was just, very, very, as everybody knows about Paul, he was just a super, super human person. And yeah, so if it wasn't for him, I don't think like I would have got an intro to Rod, and I got to meet Rod, and he got to like know who I was and know who my face was, and that's super important to me. And then I don't think I would have met Lori either.
Well, every time you popped into the Thursday night Zooms that we carried on through the pandemic, it was just like, oh, we're still connected to Colin, thank God.
It was great. I mean, that was amazing that happened and it kept going. There was a time I had to just drop off because like obviously the election cycle was ramping up and I was fully engrossed, but it was great to like see it on Facebook, see the invitation on Facebook. It was still happening. This group of people were still coming together and collaborating and enjoying each other's time and faces and sounds. And yeah, it was good. It's that's just another amazing thing that Brian was able to kind of keep that going.
Yeah. Well, I hope we get you back. I guess we'll have you back June 15th, you were saying. So
Yeah,
we'll look
flying.
forward.
I think I fly in on the 17th.
Okay. June
That
17th
Thursday.
you fly in. Okay. And I don't want to make you I don't want to make you work outside of work hours because your job is so stressful. And I always felt bad because after 2016, when I would see you there, I would have like the same concerns and I would start wanting to talk politics with you. And I was like, oh my, but he needs to come here and have time off. You cannot do that to him. So I don't want to do that to you now, but if you're willing to answer the question, for people who got a lot more involved in the last year because they were so concerned about the last election, and then Georgia, we had that amazing opportunity in Georgia that people really seized by getting out the vote, and so many people got more involved. And now I think some people are maybe kind of burned out and taking a break, but they want to keep being involved citizens.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What's the thing to do over the next 3 years to keep being a good citizen for democracy?
It's a big question. I mean, I would say get connected to a local organization. Identify a local organization that's doing the work in your town, in your city. Oakland has a bunch of them. There's like, your local organization, if they're good, they're connected to state organizations. They're connected to national fights. You don't always have to like start from the national level, and it's much better, especially if you're talking about like the roots of democracy. It's getting connected to a good local group that you care about, and that's they'll take whatever time you have. You don't have to be there 40 hours a week, or they'll take it if you can only be there one Saturday out of the month, or you can only donate $5 to this particular type of fundraising drive or whatever. They always need more people, because they are fighting fights that are usually against people who have a lot of money, corporate powers and interests, but they have people power, and that usually can win if they can get enough capacity. So giving the local group a little bit of your time will go a long way.
Okay, great. I volunteered for a local candidate for CA District 1, and I put a lot of time into it, and we didn't win, but I still feel good about having done it, because I still feel like it got a lot more people out, it got more people involved, and like the database is now built up for reaching those people in the future, and like it's going to have cumulative effects. So that's how I try to think about it.
Yeah, you're not going to win all the fights, but they're worth fighting, and like you said, they build on each other.
Yeah, great. Well, anything else that you want to talk about that I didn't ask about?
No, I mean, I think this is great. I think I want to thank you for building out kind of the Alley experience during this time of us not being able to be all together all the time. And I'm really looking forward to being there in June. I'm going to spend pretty much probably every night at the Alley, and hope to see you then.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to say hello to everyone at the Alley who misses you.
Everybody. Thank you, Reggie.